Research materials are divided into two basic categories, primary and secondary. Some librarians and archivists add a third category, known as tertiary sources. According to Princeton University libraries, a primary resource is a document or physical object which was written or created during the time under study. These sources were present during an experience or time period and offer an inside view of a particular event. Along the same lines, the University of Louisville Libraries defines a primary source as an original object or document, the raw material or first-hand information, source material that is closest to what is being studied. Primary sources can include original documents such as letters and other manuscripts, diaries, oral histories, official records of a city or state, film footage shot at the time of the event, works of art, and even physical relics. Examples of primary sources include an original copy of the Declaration of Independence, a letter written by Zola Fitzgerald, the minutes of the Claremont City Council, an illustration accompanying a paper outlining the results of an experiment on nuclear fusion, the so-called Zapruder film documenting the Kennedy assassination, the Ghent altarpiece by Jan van Eyck, artifacts recovered from Chatsworth Plantation in Louisiana. In contrast, a secondary source, according to Princeton libraries, interprets and analyzes primary sources. These sources are one or more steps removed from the event. The University of Louisville states that a secondary source is second-hand information, insofar as it presents comments on, interpretations of, or discussions about the original material. Some examples of secondary resources include a book on the history of plantations by William Scarborough, a journal article on competing methods of treating malaria from a historical perspective, an encyclopedia entry on the presidency of Abraham Lincoln, a website devoted to the appreciation of Austin Healey sports cars. Some key distinctions that mark a primary as opposed to a secondary source are whether or not it is graded proximate to the event, topic, or issue, represents a view of those present to witness the event, topic, or issue, whether or not it can be considered direct evidence of the topic, issue, or event. According to Yale University, the content, as opposed to the format, determines whether a source is primary or secondary. They suggest that the distinction is sometimes a fine one and depends on whether or not a source has the benefit of hindsight. The University of Maryland Library notes that secondary sources are sometimes harder to define than primary ones. To complicate the matter, the University of Maryland Libraries adds a third category to the mix, tertiary sources. These are defined as information which is a distillation and collection of primary and secondary sources. Tertiary sources can be thought of as compendia. According to this definition, examples of tertiary sources include the encyclopedia on Abraham Lincoln shown earlier, almanacs that compile weather data culled from other sources, city directories. For the most part, however, the distinction between secondary and tertiary sources is not as clear as the line between primary and secondary sources. Libraries, archives, museums, and other institutions typically contain a mix of secondary and primary resources among their holdings. Secondary resources are often available online. A typical library, particularly those associated with universities or involved in research, offer access via a web portal. For example, content providers such as JSTOR and LexisNexis aggregate the content of a large number of academic and trade journals. They make this content available via searchable databases. It has become increasingly popular to put primary sources online through digitization projects. For example, the Library of Congress has been a pioneer in scanning documents and uploading them to web archives for researchers to access. Their web archives also include access to digital files of sound recordings, digital images, recorded oral histories, and other primary materials that can be digitized. Google has also taken a lead in making primary materials available in virtual formats. Google Books, a project begun in 2004, worked with several major libraries such as Harvard and the University of Michigan to scan rare and other books, many of which can be seen as primary sources and make them available online without charge. The Google Art project, launched in 2011, presented ultra-high-resolution scans of paintings, prints, and other works of art from museum collections and other archives. Original participants included the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the Tate Gallery in London. It currently has agreements with more than 200 museums across the world to make primary sources in the form of digital scans available to the public. These digitization projects raise an issue. Is one truly examining a primary source if access to it is in the form of a simulacrum or substitute, no matter how close to the original or high the quality?